What is up, YouTube? As the title suggests, I have been awake for a long time. And I spent a lot of that long time trying to figure out how juicing works in the new patch, Quant kind of getting giga nerfed. I really just thought it was a time for a new king, and I think I might have found it, and I figured out the formula, cracked the code, so to speak. My current character is, what, 151% rarity? And I was able to find a strat that was able to get me pretty much one tink every single map. I ran two different strategies. One was more budget and easier to roll for, and the other one is harder to roll for, a little bit more expensive, but not significantly so. The start of the day today, so like 30 hours ago, my idea was just that Quant is dead. Essentially, if you don't know, rarity and rare monsters got buffed like 3x on the tablets. Rare monsters. This, I think, used to be like max roll was 15. And now the max roll is 40. And then rarity on maps, the max roll used to be 10. Now the max roll is 30. However, if you look here at quantity, the max roll used to be 7 and now it's 10. So it got less than a 50% buff when almost all the other tablets are getting 3x buffs, right? Which in a way is essentially the same thing as it getting a nerf. You can only run 3 of these tablets now, but they have 3 times the effect. The Quant tablets, we can run 3 times less tablets and we only get 50% increase of the effect. It's a pretty significant nerf. So starting from here, I just figured, what does Quant actually do? Quant just essentially is a multiplier on your loot. So for example, the 2 multipliers that really exist in the game is rarity and then pack. In PoE 2, in case you don't know, I would say more than 90% of the loot comes from rare monsters. When you buff pack size here, it doesn't do anything because pack size does not increase the amount of rare monsters there are. Instead, every single rare monster spawns with a pack, and that pack will then be increased in value. However, buffing rare monsters obviously buffs rare monsters, and buffing item rarity obviously buffs item rarity. So the 2 levers you really have are item rarity and rare monsters. Now, rarity on gear has diminishing returns. After a certain point, each point of rarity becomes significantly less valuable. It's speculated that this point is at around 150 rarity, which is why I'm running 150 rarity on my gear. However, on map rarity, it is pretty much confirmed that there is no diminishing returns. So there is no kind of cap where at a certain amount of map rarity, the rarity becomes less effective. And same thing with rare monsters. To my knowledge, not that I know of, and for the purpose of this juice, we're not going to be going that high into rare monsters anyways, but rare monsters, there is no diminishing returns there either. So functionally, the way our maps work and the way our juice for our maps work is 3 multipliers. Rare monsters times rarity times quant. Now, Quant is really powerful because we can juice our rare monsters and our rarity on our maps pretty easily, but there's no way to juice Quant except for on tablets. So the idea is that on a normal map, like a really good map, for example, 45 rare monsters, 85 rarity. Maybe you can do something better. Maybe you can do something like 45 rare monsters, 96% rarity. Together, it's around 140. The total amount of this is like 140. That I think is usually considered to be a pretty solid map. So the idea though is that normally before you could get 55% quant, I believe, with a 7 quant tablet setup on a triple tower, which would equal to around 55 quant on your maps. And then tablet buffs on your atlas would bring it up to like 75% quant or something like that, which in effect almost doubles the amount of loot that you're going to get. However, now the max you can get on your tablets is 30%, which then after the multipliers from your atlas tree only really bring us to like 43%, which is still good. It's less than 50%, but it's still good. However, what you have to understand is this. If I can essentially double the amount of rare monsters, that is the same thing as doubling the amount of quant effectively, because rare monsters account for almost all of the loot in maps. Instead of buffing quant at like 40%, if we can buff rare monsters at like 60% even, that would be better than 40% quant. And it's very easy to do that because again, you don't even need perfect rolls on your rare monsters. If you have 35% or even 30% rare monster tablets, will get us to 60% more rare monsters. And if you only have like 40% rare monsters on your map, that is going to be like a 33% total quant increase in your map. And that's only using 2 of your tablets. So effectively, just having 2 of your rare tablets being like rare monsters, for example, effectively gives you the same amount of quant as 30% quant on your maps do, while still leaving you 1 tablet open to, I don't know, juice it again with rare monsters, or you can juice it with more rarity, for example. Because the way rarity is calculated is there's 3 factors for rarity as well. It's rarity on your gear multiplied by rarity on your map multiplied by monster rarity. And that's something that you might not know about, but I'll get into later in this video. But that's kind of the baseline idea of the premise of my juicing. It's that instead of juicing quant, because quant is so shit now, we are going to juice rare monsters because rare monsters and quant are effectively the same thing. Instead of dropping more loot, we're just gonna have more monsters to kill, which will give us more loot in return. Sorry, there's actually one more thing I wanted to say, and that's we're not just juicing rare monsters, we're juicing rarity in addition to rare monsters as well. So we see more rare monsters and a higher quality of loot from them as well. Cool. So now that we have that understood, what are our juicing options? We can juice Deli. This you can't do. You can't do a mirror because if you run Deli on your map, it gets rid of the mirror. So this is dead. Expedition, kind of meh. Like it's okay to farm logbooks, but like it doesn't really do anything. Ritual, gutted, and also it doesn't synergize with going for high quant, going for high rarity, that kind of stuff. You want pack size for this just to farm and spam tributes and see more ritual windows, which leads us to our final option, which is breach, which I think is a really good option because breach spawns a ton of rares, and we're going to be juicing rares and we're going to be juicing quant. It's perfect. These are just the skill trees. This is just like the best case scenario, the two best things you can go. I'm 100% certain that this is the case. I'm going to get into explain why in a bit. So we are going to be juicing rarity, rare monsters, and breach. We're going to have two tablets essentially. Whether we put rarity or rare monsters on our tablet is dependent on what we have on our maps. So for example, if we have a map like this one, we have 145, 142 rarity, 45 rare monsters. This is a great map. But as you can see, we have way more rarity than rare monsters. So we're going to prioritize putting rare monsters on our tablets. If it was the opposite, we had like 142 rare monsters and like 40 rarity, we would then prioritize getting more rarity on our tablets. I think rarity is worth more than rare monsters, but they're roughly equal. I think it's like 1.2 to like 1, or like maybe 1.3 to 1 in favor of rarity. In general, you want them to be kind of close to each other because again, they're multiplicative. The best example I could give you is like, assuming that they were 1 to 1, right? If you do like 50 times 50, that's 2,500. A total of 100 being multiplied with each other. If you do 40 times 60, which is also a total of 100 being multiplied to each other, you only get 2,400. Essentially, the closer you are towards like them being the same value, the more value you get from like multiplicative math. Awesome. So that is the idea. So we are going to be running either rarity or rare monsters as our prefix. And then as our suffix, we're going to want one of two things. We're going to either want contains an additional breach, the higher chance, the better, or we're going to want contain 3 additional breaches. Ideally, we're going to have one of each in our setup. What ends up happening is if you proc your Atlas thing, which doubles your tablet effects, you'll end up getting like over 100% of additional breach and it rounds down to 1. So you end up losing a little bit of effect on your juice there. But that's the idea that we're going for. And then our third tablet is going to be a special tablet. It's going to be one of these adds additional modifiers to your map tablets. These are kind of expensive. I think rare and rarity combined with random modifiers is like 2 or 3 div right now. Ideally you have 2, but theoretically you can have 1 as well. That's totally acceptable. Theoretically, you could also just not run any of these and just run another breach tablet. That's totally acceptable as well. It's very, very valuable. I actually didn't test it without this just because I knew from last patch that these were incredibly broken. And I bought a bunch of these for very, very cheap. So I've always just been running them. You definitely won't be able to get 1 tink per map without this tablet. I think it's very, very worth to invest into this tablet. But if you don't, I still think that this is the best juicing method out there right now. These are essentially going to be your 3 tablets. You're going to want rarity or rare monsters on the prefixes, and then 1, 3 breach, and then 1 additional breach, which is 1 breach. Your third tablet is going to be either rarity or rare monsters and 1 or 2 additional random modifiers to your map. So this just adds another map modifier, and map modifiers add like rarity, rare monsters, magic, pack size, that kind of stuff. So it's just a little bit more juice for your map. It will affect your tinks and your drop rates pretty significantly. Anyways, what was like my test results? What was I doing? So I started off the day testing just one thing. Rare monsters have an additional modifier plus good amount of item rarity. So for example, after I paranoia this map, it'll look something like this. High rare monsters, high rarity. Like I said, they're roughly equal. It's not a big deal. One's higher than the other, that's okay. If I were to run a map like this, I would just be running all these like rarity maps on my tablets to offset the high amount of rare monsters that I have. Totally acceptable. And I was actually pumping giga loot. I was getting like 2 tinks a map. And I was testing out, instead of running paranoia, I was running fear, which just gives you an additional modifier. And it was working too. And everything was just like minimum 1 tink per map. The reason why rare modifiers are so good is, think about it like this. Fear, Essence, which is one of the best ways you can juice. These are 33 exalts each. What do they do? These just add on a 25% chance for an additional rare modifier. If you have 3 of them on, what ends up happening is you have like a 111% chance for an additional modifier. But essentially you are spending all 3 of your distillation juice and 90 exalts in order to get an additional rare modifier. But you can just get that shit for free on your Waystone. And then this also gives you rare monsters. I think 25% rare monsters. So this is by far the most OP line of text on your Waystone that you can find. I was just buying these maps with this modifier, high rarity, high rare monsters, active filter on trade, and just picking up as many as I can. and then you juice it up. You do the Sinister Necromancy. These are quite expensive, 33x as well. And with the Desecration, and you're hunting for two things, rarity or rare monsters. And if you guys don't know, this website here, it shows you where all the modifiers do. I'll link it in the description, but you are gonna want things that give you rarity or more rare monsters. On top of that, and most importantly, you want Abysses have additional pits, 14 to 18. If you get one of these maps, that's like the best modifier. It doesn't even matter. It gives you shit. It gives you like pack size and map drop chance. Really, really bad mods that it actually gives you, but this is the most valuable stat. Giga juices your map. If you hit a map like this with the +1, you could probably sell it for like 2 div. However, if you want to run it as well, more power to you. It's Giga Juice. On top of that, you also want this natural rare monsters in the area have 1 extra Abyss modifier. This is just the same thing, 1 extra modifier. He also gives you 30% rare pack. So 30% more rare monsters. It's just the best rare pack modifier you can get on a prefix. And then after that, you just want shit like Abyssal Depths, additional pits. These both give you like rarity or rare monsters. What else is there? Always have rewards. This gives you 30% more rare monsters. Abyss leads to a boss, also rarity. Abyssal Depth, also rarity. So just take a look here. All you really want is more rarity or more monsters, depending on what you're lacking. If you're roughly equal, I would always prioritize item rarity, unless you have this Overrun, which is priority 1, and then natural rare monsters priority 2. So I talked a lot about this like rare monster thing, and you're probably wondering now, like, what's the point of all this, right? Like rare modifiers, like what does that actually do? So remember earlier I said there's 3 ways you calculate rarity in this game. Number 1, item rarity on your gear. This has a pretty much a hard cap, has diminishing returns at around 150%. There's certain breakpoints where like maybe like 500 or 600% reach a point where it becomes valuable to get more rarity again, but no one needs to worry about that unless you're doing party play stuff, which I'm assuming you guys aren't. The second thing is rarity on your map. These are multiplicatively with each other. We know this for a fact. The amount of rarity you have on your gear is more impactful based off the amount of rarity you have on your maps. And the third thing is monster rarity. Why do you think rare monsters drop way more loot than, for example, normal monsters? It's because rare monsters have way higher natural rarity. What additional modifiers do is they not only give you more rarity, but they also give you quantity as well. It's possible this has changed, but this is how it's been for like the last 2 patches. As a result, we are in a situation where we already have high rarity on our gear and we have high rarity on our maps. These are multiplicative with each other. If we then have high rarity on the monster, that means that those 2 things that are already high are even more valuable now. And on top of that, just had quantity nerfed. We have very, very few sources of quantity. Now we can also get quantity on the mobs themselves. This is absolutely fucking amazing. It's just one of the best ways you can juice your maps is by having additional modifiers. And that's why Fear is like 33 exalts each right now, is because people are figuring that out. That is how you juice your map. What I was prioritizing is getting additional rare monsters as a normal mod, then getting Fear as the Distill. And then if you could get Abyss Overrun, amazing. If you get an extra mod, Abyss mod, also amazing. One thing I want to mention though, a lot of variance right now in juicing. It's because there's low quant. So there's a lot of variance that's going on. But I would say your best bet is you want at least 1 rare modifier here. You could theoretically go like chaotic rarity and get high rarity on your tablet, like this one, and then you could just distill Fear on. From my testing, the best results are when you have it on naturally here, and then you can distill something else on here, or you can just go double rare modifiers with Fear. That is pretty much the tech. These additional modifier mods on maps are giga broken and affect juicing in like a exponential multiplicative way. And I think if you take advantage of that, you'll be able to see like noticeable impacts in your loot. So to give you an example here, like I said, I streamed for like 30 hours yesterday, probably ran like 200 maps in those 30 hours, but I did notably 2 sets of 10 for each of these strategies of Fear with the single mod and then the single mod plus Paranoia. I also did some with like double mod plus the rarity, and then some testing on like overrun maps and isolation, distillation, like all this kind of stuff. I won't get into that stuff with you. That's like more high-end stuff. I might make another video about that later. But just for now, no, I did a lot of testing on this, okay? And I started off 1 or 2 tinks per map. And for some reason, I came back to it later and it wasn't pumping anymore. And I realized what the problem was, is that you actually need to be very, very cognizant of not just having this +1 rare mod and the Fear on, but you need to make sure you actually have a lot of juice on your map too. Like a lot of high rare monsters and a lot of item rarity on your map. This is like half of the item rarity and half of the rare monsters you're gonna get, period, are gonna come from your map. The other half is gonna come from the tablets. So if you're losing like half of your rare monsters off of your map, you're losing like a quarter of your juice off the rip. You're already spending like 60x per map just on the map. You're spending like probably 60x per map just on the tablets, probably more. you need to make sure for your money, you're getting the best bang for your buck. So if you're running like, you know, +1 modifier with like fear, but you have like 30 rare monsters and like 40 item rarity, it's just not going to cut it. It's going to feel bad. I noticed once I was getting to like a combined like 120, 130, 140 or above of these two stats, and then like offsetting it with my tablets, whatever is lacking. Like in this case, I would offset this item rarity with more rarity on my tablets. I started noticing one tink every single map pretty much. So this is kind of like the 10 map test. It's kind of a small sample size, but the reality is like, this is the 10 that I recorded. I probably did like 30 or 40 of the same parameters. And this is like very, very much in line with what I experienced. Okay. This was the example where I did the double rare mod. So rare mod on the map and then rare mod on the distill. I got one tink every map on average. Maybe like the last two maps I didn't see a tink, but it was 6 divines, 1 omen of light, and then 1 perfect exalt. That's just the tinks, right? I also saw like 2 div and chaos orbs. I saw a div and annulments. I saw a div and fracturing orbs. You know what I mean? There's a lot of other currency as well. Easily probably 13 to 15 div just in currency drops. I did another trial run just doing additional rare modifiers. I was doing paranoia for my distill, not fear. And as a result, the juice is a little bit less. I will say this though, I probably did 30 of these maps and it was very, very high variance. My first 10 set of this, it was actually more than the fear. My second set of 10, it was like almost no loot, but that was when I was like, I had really poorly juiced maps. So that was why that was there. And then this last set, that my map juice, I'll admit, wasn't as good as it probably could have been. It was still like a tink every other map. Very, very solid. So take that how you will. I would definitely experiment with these two different variations of paranoia or fear, but I think you almost need to have this rare modifier on there, at least for the juice that I was testing. There's one more thing I need to talk about. Where are we actually running our maps? So because we can do this wherever we want now, we don't need double or triple tower setups on our corruption zones or our cleanse zones. Now we can just do this on every single cleanse zone. It's amazing. What I recommend that you do is you only do it on cleanse zones. I mean, you could theoretically do +1 on like a corruption zone, but cleanse zone is way better. Because if you see here, it says cleanse area has 24 additional packs of cleanse monsters. These monster packs are fucking insane. They have mobs that are like the big, disgusting Jabba the Hutt worms that only like, maybe not only drop currency, but they drop currency at a much higher, like an inflated rate. So you're going to be seeing a lot of currency drops, and you're going to be seeing like, this is, I think, is the only place where you can get fracturing orbs too, which have actually increased in price pretty significantly. So you're going to want to only run this setup on specifically cleanse zone. Number 2, there's a really important part here. Not just have these additional packs on every single one, but they also have one additional mod on top of that. So you can get increased gold, you can get increased rarity and like decreased experience gain. This is like one of the best ones. And you can also get Waystone increased, like increased prefix, decreased suffix. This is also a really good one. Oh, and this one, you can get reduced quant, increased rarity. Terrible, absolutely terrible. We have no natural quant anymore. This cuts our loot in half, and then this does not double our loot. So it's net negative for sure. Do not run these. I just skip those. Second thing, this is really important and it leads me into my next subject as well. The way gold is calculated in PoE 2 is, for some reason, gold and currency have like similar tags, if not the same tag. I don't know how exactly it works, but by having increased gold, you will have decreased rarity for currency. I'm not sure if it's decreased rarity for currency or decreased quantity for currency, but run one of these increased gold maps and you will see it's pretty much the same thing as running 50% less quant right here. It's really, really bad. I skip these entirely. They're not worth running. So you end up just running the maps that just have the packs, have experience loss, and then rare monsters, additional prefix. These are all really, really good to run. I think there's also one more map you can run, which is +1. Like that's the other modifier you can get, is you can get +1 to the area level. In that case, I would highly recommend you use like a tier 16, but if you don't have those, whatever, like you can just use a tier 15. It doesn't really matter that much, because if you irradiate it with a tier 16, you can get to eye level 82, which is like make it so every single base you drop is like premium. I think that's it. So like the only ones you don't run are gold found, and then also this reduced quant with increased rarity. Besides that, you can run every single one of them. So that's kind of like my segue into like the Atlas tree. This is just the Atlas tree. It's really, really simple. The reason why I brought this up and the reason why it's a good segue is there's this thing called local knowledge. This gives you increased currency drop on swamp and water biomes. This is noticeably good. I just leave this on for the most part. But this is insano bad. Mountain biomes have 40% increased chance to drop gold. This is about as bad as this is good. So we want to make sure that on the mountain biome maps, we toggle this off. And when you toggle this off, what you just do is you drop this point for this point here. So the whole point of this tree is not to juice any of these random extra content that you can get, like Rogue Exiles, Strong Box, its Mirror Spirits, Essences, that kind of stuff. The whole purpose of this tree is to make it so that we get more loot from killing monsters. So as a result, we just kind of spec into things like Quant, explicit modifiers in our Waystone, which just makes it so we have more rarity, increased rare monsters, that kind of stuff, and also increased effect on our precursor tablets, which again, we're juicing with rarity and increased rare monsters. So just a lot more juice on our maps. And all this other stuff is just like the most optimal way to path to these nodes that will give us a greater effect of what we're already trying to do. And it's just as straightforward as that. The breach is very simple. These are just like the best nodes to give you more juice in your breach. This is very, very good, not because of the catalyst, but this is good because the rare breach monsters in your map now have Soul Eater, which if you're running Headhunter gives you more damage, which is awesome. But more importantly, even if you're not running Headhunter, it gives every single rare in the breach an additional modifier. And as we just discussed, additional modifiers are giga broken. So this is going to be what makes the loot from breach fucking delicious. That's everything. All my knowledge about juicing maps as a whole. And if you can utilize all this stuff, I guarantee you guys are going to see some insano increases to the amount of loot that you're getting. The loot that I'm getting this patch is not only more consistent in the sense that I don't have to do as many travel maps, but also the amount of loot that I get per setup, per cleanse zone is better than I had last patch. It's very, very nice, both in terms of consistency and also in terms of the raw reward. Awesome. Anyways, that's all I really had today. I have been awake for way too long. Thank you guys so much for watching. Oh yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye.